In the year 1962, a young couple moved into a modest white house on the outskirts of Springfield, Massachusetts. From the outside, it looked ordinary: white picket fence, neat little garden, a quiet neighborhood where children played in the streets. To anyone passing by, the house was just another home. But to the couple, it soon became a prison of shadows. At first, the wife was the only one who noticed the changes. Late at night, as she carried laundry upstairs, she would hear slow, deliberate footsteps following her up the staircase. She would turn, yet no one was there. The wooden floorboards, however, groaned as if someone had just taken a step. The husband dismissed it. Old houses creak, he told her. But the noises grew more specific. It wasn't just creaks. It was the sound of breathing behind her, a whisper brushing against her ear, words she could not understand. Then came the doors. One by one, doors around the house began to slam shut with violent force, rattling the walls so hard that picture frames fell to the floor. The couple tried to explain it away as drafts, but the windows were locked tight. The wife began to feel watched. While washing dishes at the kitchen sink, she would see something move in the reflection of the glass window, a tall, dark figure standing just behind her shoulder. She would spin around, but nothing was there. Sleep offered no escape. She often woke in the dead of night to the sound of whispering in her bedroom, as if two unseen figures were speaking right beside the bed. On some nights, she claimed, she saw the closet door creak open on its own, a sliver of darkness spreading wider until the room grew colder. One evening, as the couple prepared for bed, the wife froze at the vanity mirror. For a brief, shattering second, she saw not her own reflection, but a shadow with hollow eyes staring back at her. That was the night, she whispered to her husband. There's something in this house, and it knows me. The husband still tried to stay calm, but unease began to creep into his own heart. What had started as little disturbances was slowly turning into something far more sinister. The house was alive. The disturbances that had once seemed like small annoyances soon grew into something that could no longer be ignored. The couple's nights were no longer peaceful, they were battlegrounds of fear. The first violent incident came on a rainy evening. The husband was sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper, when suddenly the lamp beside him crashed to the floor, as though knocked over by an invisible hand. He swore he hadn't touched it. Before he could pick it up, the television switched on by itself. The screen filled with static, hissing loudly. His wife screamed from the kitchen as the cabinet doors banged open and shut in rapid succession, as though someone inside was trying to claw their way out. From that night on, the activity only worsened. Objects no longer merely shifted, they flew across rooms. Plates lifted from the dining table and smashed against the walls with such force that sharp fragments embedded themselves in the wood. Chairs dragged themselves across the floor with a deafening screech, moving as if pulled by unseen ropes. The wife bore the brunt of the haunting. She would wake at night pinned to the bed by a crushing weight on her chest. Once, the husband awoke to see her hovering nearly 2 feet in the air, her body rigid, her eyes rolled back, her hair dangling downward as if gravity itself had turned against her. When he reached for her, she dropped suddenly onto the mattress with a bone-rattling thud. She gasped for breath, trembling violently. Neighbors began to notice strange things as well. On several nights, they reported hearing screams so raw, so blood-curdling, that they thought someone was being murdered inside the house. But when the police arrived, the couple insisted they had made no sound. The officers would leave uneasy, muttering that the house felt wrong. The wife's condition deteriorated. She grew pale, sleepless, with dark circles under her eyes. She confided in her husband that she felt watched constantly, even outside the house. She described a shadowy figure, tall, gaunt, faceless, that followed her from room to room. Sometimes, she said, she would feel its icy fingers graze her arm or brush across her hair. One night, she dared to confront it. Standing in the darkened hallway, she whispered into the shadows, "What do you want?" The reply came not in words, but in a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the walls, shaking the very floor beneath her feet. That was the breaking point. The husband could no longer deny what was happening. Fear gnawed at him day and night. Something unnatural had taken hold of their home, and it was not going to leave them in peace. With no other options left, The desperate couple reached out to the only people they had heard might understand: Ed and Lorraine Warren. By the time the Warrens received the call, the couple in Springfield was on the verge of collapse, sleep-deprived, terrified, and unable to live another day in their home. They poured out their story in trembling voices over the phone. Ed and Lorraine listened carefully. This was not the first time they had heard such claims, but something in the wife's tone unsettled Lorraine. It was the raw terror of a woman who had seen something she should never have seen. The very next evening, the Warrens arrived at the house. As soon as Lorraine stepped out of the car, she felt it. The air was unnaturally heavy, as though the house itself was exhaling a suffocating breath. The curtains in the upstairs window shifted, though no one was inside that room. Lorraine whispered to Ed, her face pale, "It knows we're here." The husband opened the door quickly, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. His wife hovered behind him, frail and nervous, clutching a rosary that trembled in her hands. They led the Warrens into the living room, where the atmosphere was oppressively still, like the calm before a storm. Lorraine moved quietly through the rooms, her gift of clairvoyance pulling her deeper into the house's hidden darkness. She paused in the hallway and closed her eyes. For a moment, her breathing quickened, and when she spoke, her voice shook. Something ancient lingers here. It despises her. It wants her gone, or worse. Ed, the pragmatic investigator, began his work taking notes, marking cold spots, setting up his audio recorder and camera equipment. But even he admitted there was a palpable unease pressing down on them. The couple then revealed the most chilling detail yet. While cleaning the basement weeks earlier, the husband had discovered strange markings carved into the stone foundation, symbols he did not recognize, circles and lines that looked ritualistic. Ed immediately suspected occult involvement. His research over the following hours confirmed their worst fears. In the late 1800s, the land had been rumored to host gatherings of an occult sect. Dark rituals had been performed here, including blood sacrifices meant to summon a demonic entity. Records from local archives told of a man who vanished mysteriously after attempting such a summoning. His name was lost to time, but whispers of his deeds had clung to the land like a stain. Ed closed the ledger with grim certainty. This house was never meant to be a home. It was built on a scar. Lorraine shivered as her gaze turned upward to the ceiling. She could see it now, a writhing, black mass, slithering just out of human sight. Its form was shifting, half smoke, half shadow, its face distorting into a hollow-eyed grin before vanishing again into the corners of the room. The wife clutched Lorraine's arm in desperation. "You believe me now, don't you? I'm not crazy." Lorraine held her close, whispering softly, "You're not crazy, but you are being hunted." And in that moment, the house seemed to come alive. A loud bang echoed from the kitchen, followed by the crash of dishes shattering to the floor. The lights flickered violently, plunging them into brief darkness. From somewhere deep within the house, a low, guttural growl reverberated through the walls. Ed steadied himself, eyes narrowing. "It knows we're here, and it's not going to hide anymore." The Warrens stayed into the night, determined to confront whatever plagued the house. But they didn't have to wait long. The house itself was eager to show its fury. It began with the crucifixes. Lorraine had hung small crosses in the main hallway, hoping to bring some peace to the restless air. But within minutes, the couple watched in horror as each crucifix began to twist on its nail, turning slowly until they all hung upside down. The wife screamed, clutching her rosary so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Then came the temperature drop. In the middle of July, the air inside the house grew so bitterly cold that their breath came out in misty clouds. Ed checked the thermostat. It was broken, the needle spinning wildly as though the house rejected any sense of control. Lorraine, standing in the center of the living room, suddenly gasped. Her eyes widened in terror. She pointed upward. On the ceiling, a black mass was spreading, shifting and writhing like smoke, but denser, almost alive. Its form slithered across the plaster, stretching, twisting, and then it began to take shape. Long limbs, a hollow face, its grin widening unnaturally. The husband staggered backward. "My God, it's real." The figure dropped from the ceiling with a thunderous crash, but before it hit the floor, it dissolved into a rolling shadow that darted through the room, extinguishing every lamp and bulb as it passed. The entire house was plunged into darkness. Then the growling began, low, guttural, vibrating through the walls, rising louder and louder until it shook the very floorboards. The couple clung to each other, trembling. Lorraine pressed her palms to her temples, whispering in prayer, her clairvoyant senses overwhelmed by the sheer hatred radiating through the entity. Suddenly, the wife shrieked. Something invisible had gripped her by the hair, yanking her violently backward across the floor. She kicked and screamed as her husband tried to pull her free, but it was as though unseen claws were dragging her toward the shadow gathering in the corner of the room. "Let her go," Ed roared, holding up a crucifix. His voice cut through the chaos, but the entity only grew more violent. The crucifix in his hand grew hot, so hot it seared his palm, forcing him to drop it. From the walls came the sound of scratching, as if thousands of nails were clawing from the inside, desperate to escape. Then blood-dark, sticky streaks began to seep down the wallpaper, dripping onto the floor. The smell of rot filled the air. Lorraine, her voice trembling but resolute, called out, "This is not your home. In the name of God, leave this family." For a moment, the growling stopped. Silence fell, and then, from the darkness, a deep, mocking laughter answered her, chilling every soul in the room. The wife collapsed into her husband's arms as the shadow retreated briefly, slithering back into the walls. But the Warrens knew this was far from over. Ed turned to the terrified couple, his expression grim. "It's not going to stop. We'll need the church. Without an exorcism, this thing will tear you apart." Ed and Lorraine knew they could not face this alone. The malevolence inside the Springfield house was beyond charms, beyond prayers whispered in fear. They contacted the local Catholic church, and after reviewing the Warrens' evidence, photographs of shadows, audio tapes of guttural growls, and the testimony of terrified neighbors, the church sent a priest. He arrived at dusk, carrying holy water, a Bible, and a crucifix. The sky outside was heavy with storm clouds, as though nature itself was warning them of what was about to happen. The moment the priest crossed the threshold, the house reacted. The lights flickered, every door slammed shut simultaneously, and a violent wind whipped through the rooms, though not a single window was open. The priest set up in the living room, the heart of the house's torment. Ed stood guard with the family, while Lorraine held her rosary tightly, whispering prayers. The priest began in a calm, steady voice, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." At first, nothing happened, but then came a low, inhuman growl that grew louder with each word of scripture. The walls trembled. The crucifixes Lorraine had placed began to shake violently. Suddenly, one of them snapped off the wall and shot across the room, embedding itself in the plaster inches from Ed's head. The priest raised the crucifix high. "I command you, spirit of darkness, reveal yourself." The entity obeyed. From the corner of the room, the shadow began to swell, thick and black, growing taller until it touched the ceiling. Two hollow eyes opened within it, glowing faintly, and a twisted mouth stretched wide into a grotesque grin. The wife screamed as the figure lunged forward, its arms extending unnaturally long, slamming into the coffee table and shattering it into splinters. The husband tried to shield his wife, but invisible hands seized him and hurled him against the wall with bone-jarring force. He crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath. Lorraine staggered back, clutching her head. She could hear its voice not with her ears, but inside her mind. A chorus of whispers and screams overlapped, 1,000 damned souls crying out in agony. She cried out to Ed, "It's feeding on us, it wants her soul." The priest continued, louder now, his voice defiant against the chaos. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." The shadow roared, shaking the house so violently that glass shattered in the windows. Blood began to seep from the cracks in the walls, dripping in long, red streaks. The stench of sulfur filled the air. Then the entity struck at the wife again, dragging her across the floor toward the yawning blackness that had opened in the corner of the room. It was not just shadow anymore, it was a gateway, a swirling void of darkness, pulling her toward it. She clawed at the floor, screaming. Ed rushed forward, seizing her hands, pulling with all his strength. "Hold on, don't let go," he shouted. His muscles burned. The force pulling against him was inhuman, but he refused to release her. The priest splashed holy water onto the shadow, and with a deafening screech, it recoiled. Steam hissed from the walls, and the blood receded, drying instantly. The wife collapsed into Ed's arms as the void snapped shut with a thunderous crack. And then, silence. The air cleared, the stench lifted, the black figure was gone. The priest lowered his crucifix, his hand trembling. "It is finished," he whispered. But Lorraine, still clutching her rosary, shook her head. Her eyes were glassy, haunted. "No, it's not gone. It's only been forced back. That thing still lingers on this land." The family wept, exhausted, but alive. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet, but every soul present knew the truth. The fight had not destroyed the entity, it had only driven it into the shadows, waiting for its next chance to return. The Springfield house was quiet for the first time in weeks. No footsteps, no whispers, no growls vibrating through the walls. The air, once thick with dread, now felt still though not peaceful. It was the silence of a predator that had been forced back into its lair. The priest packed his things with trembling hands, sweat beading on his forehead. He had seen many hauntings, but he admitted quietly to Ed, this one was different. That wasn't just a spirit. That was something older, something that should never have been called into this world." The family was exhausted, clinging to one another in tears. The wife, her body bruised from being dragged and pulled by unseen claws, whispered to Lorraine, "Is it over? Tell me it's over." Lorraine knelt before her, holding both her hands. Her eyes were kind, but her words carried a heavy truth. "It's quiet for now, but this land has been scarred. Something was invited here long ago, and though it has been pushed back, it may never truly leave. You must be careful. Never ever invite it back." She warned them against SANCs, Ouija boards, or even speaking to the shadows again. "It listens," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It waits for weakness, for fear. That is how it enters." Ed, practical and stern, urged them to consider leaving the home altogether. "A place like this is a wound," he said. "You can cleanse it, but the scar always remains. If you stay, it may heal, or it may reopen. But if you go, at least you won't be here when it does." The couple tried to remain strong, but the decision was made for them within months. The wife could not bear the memories, the feeling of eyes watching her in every corner, the sound of laughter that sometimes echoed faintly in her dreams. They sold the house and moved far away, never speaking publicly about what they had endured. Years later, when asked in interviews, Lorraine admitted the Springfield case haunted her memory. She described the entity not as a ghost, but as a true demonic presence, a force summoned deliberately by human hands through occult rituals and left to fester on the land. Ed would later call it one of the most violent early cases we ever faced. That house had something in it that wasn't human, wasn't of this world, and wasn't meant to walk among the living. The Springfield house still stands today, a simple home on a quiet street, indistinguishable from the others. Children ride their bikes past it, neighbors mow their lawns, and few know the truth of what once happened within its walls. But for those who lived it, for the family, for the priest, and for the Warrens, there is no forgetting. Because some houses are more than wood and stone. Some houses are wounds. And wounds never truly heal. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.